Hi and welcome to Play Hooky with me. My name is Roz, and in today's video I'm going to share how to make these really fun and easy plant holders. I'll be sharing step by step how to make the cat, as well as tips on with a few simple changes you can transform it into a bunny or a puppy. Now this video does have several parts, so I've broken the video into chapters to help you navigate around. You can find them along the progress line or check in the description box below the video, and you can find the links there as well. The planter that we're making today is about 3 by 5 if you just do a straight measurement like that. The opening here is about 3 inches. You can stretch it out a little bit more. Diameter is probably about 4.5 to 5 inches. A quick rundown of the supplies that you see here for the project. I just went ahead and grabbed some plants over at my local Walmart, and this container is about 3.5 inches, and that works just perfectly fine for this. If you want to work a little bit smaller, I found these really cute little succulents at 2.5 inches, and this fits perfectly in this little one, and I'll talk more about sizing here in just a minute. I'm using a worsted yarn or a weight 4. This requires a 5.5 or 6 millimeter hook. And then if you want to go smaller, you're going to follow the pattern exactly, but you're just going to go down to a smaller hook and yarn weight. For example, for the little kitten that you see here, I used a 4 millimeter hook with a sport weight yarn. This particular one here is a Stylecraft Special DK, but any weight 3 yarn will do. For the eyes, I am using safety eyes for this project. This is a 7 millimeter, I believe. Now, if you don't have safety eyes or you don't want to use the safety eyes, no worries there. I am going to show how to do a French knot eye and then just a standard eye for an alternative. The plants that I found all have drainage holes at the bottom, so I did need to find some way to keep that water in. And what I used were just very simple plastic cups that I just cut to size. An optional supply here is just some starch. I just use this to help stiffen the ears a little bit and the body, just to keep its shape. And I'll go into more detail when we get to that segment as well. We're going to be working in the round, and we're going to be working in multiples of 8 to build the base of the planter. To get started, we're going to do a magic circle or a magic ring. If you don't like doing magic rings, I would recommend that you chain 4 and then do a slip stitch in that very first chain next to the knot. But to do a magic circle, I find this is the easiest way. Just wrap the yarn around your fingers, hold it in place with your thumb and forefinger, go through your loop, holding the yarn with your middle finger and your ring finger. Just pull that yarn through that loop and then secure with a chain. If you did do the chain 4 with the slip stitch, go ahead and chain 1, and now we're all on the same page. To begin, we're going to do 8 single crochets within our circle. 1, that's Sadie in the background. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Go ahead and tighten your circle if you did the magic ring. Okay, at this point we are not going to complete this round, we're just going to continue on. Go ahead and grab your stitch marker. I'm going to go ahead and put my stitch marker in the very last stitch that I made. For some reason, this is the easiest for me. Others like to put their little stitch marker or strand of yarn in between, or some like to put it in the very first stitch. It's completely up to you. Do whatever makes the most sense for you. For round 2, we're going to double this, so we're going to do increases in every single stitch. And that just means we're going to do 2 single crochets in each stitch around. So we're going to go from 8 to 16, working into that very first stitch, 2 single crochets. Great. We're just going to do this all the way around, 2 single crochets in each stitch around. Okay, we're at the very last stitch. Your final 2. For round 3 and throughout, as we're building and increasing the body here, we're going to be working in multiples of 8. So we're going to be increasing each round by 8 stitches. For round 3, we're going to be doing that by doing 1 single crochet in the first stitch and then an increase in the next stitch. So going into that very first stitch, 1 single crochet, next stitch, 2 single crochets. And now that's Loki in the background. We're going to repeat this all the way around. 1 single crochet, increase. 1 single crochet, increase. 1 single crochet, increase. Okay, in the last stitch, I've ended with 2 single crochets, so I know I'm on track. Round 4, we're going to increase again, and we're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase. So that means single crochet, increase. So we're going to go in, single crochet, and then an increase. That means 2 single crochets in the same stitch. Just continue this all around. 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, and increase. Quick tip here, you may notice that your circle is starting to get an octagon shape. That's because we're doing those increases in the exact same order each time. You can avoid this by switching it up a little bit. So what I like to do is just reverse it sometimes. Your intention with that is just to move those increases around so that you don't get this kind of octagon shape. So we're doing 8 increases, so you can just put those wherever you like. For round 5, we're doing single crochets all the way around, so we're keeping our stitch count to 32. For round 6, we are going to be increasing again, so now we're going to do 3 single crochets and then an increase. 1, 2, 3, and increase. Repeat this all the way around. Round 8 is another increase round, so now we're going to do 4 single crochets with an increase. 4 and increase. Repeat this sequence all the way around, and at the end you should have 48. For round 9, 10, and 11, we're just going to do single crochets all the way around. So the next 3 rounds are just keeping that 48 stitch count. For round 12, we're going to start decreasing. Now we're not going to be decreasing by 8, we're going to go down to a decrease of 6. To do the decreasing, you can really do them anywhere you like. You just want to make sure that you've done 6 decreases. But to follow along here, I'm going to do 6 single crochets and then a decrease. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's Loki, he's awake and hungry. To do a decrease, go into the first stitch, pull your yarn through, go into the second stitch, and pull the yarn through. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. That is a decrease. We're going to do 6 single crochets and then a decrease all the way around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a decrease. Go into the first stitch, pull your yarn through, go into the next stitch, and pull your yarn through. Yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and that's your decrease. If you followed along with my sequence, you should be left with 2 stitches left for your very final decrease. 1, 2, and then pull through all 3 for your final decrease. For round 13, we're just going to do single crochets all the way around, totaling 42 stitches. For round 14, we're going to do another decrease. We're doing 6 decreases. So before we did 6 single crochets with a decrease, now we're going to do 5 single crochets with a decrease. Two, 3, 4, and 5. Decrease. And continue this all the way around. For round 15, we're just going to do single crochets all the way around. That should give you a total of 36. For round 16, this is our final round of decreasing. We're going to go from 36 down to 30, and we're just going to do the same thing. Now, instead of 5 single crochets with a decrease, we're going to do 4 single crochets with a decrease. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Decrease. And repeat this all the way around. Okay. And then for the final round, we're just going to repeat that now with just single crochets all the way around, giving us a total of 30 stitches. This is the very last round. All right, and we are all done. You can finish this off with a knot if you like, or if you don't like, you can just pull it and create another little stitch. Weave in however you like best. To work the little muzzle here, we're just going to be making 2 circles with single crochets. Very, very simple. We're going to be using the same type of yarn and the same size hook. To work the puff, we're just going to start with a magic circle. Remember, if you don't like doing magic circles, you can do a chain 4 with a slip stitch in that first stitch next to the knot, and then you can use your tail to stitch it closed. And now we're just going to do 8 single crochets within that circle. Pull it closed. And now in that very first stitch, go in, pull your yarn through to form a slip stitch to finish your round. Now, one thing that I would suggest is pick which side you like better for the muzzle. I like to use the wrong side for this, so I'm going to take that initial tail and just put it into the front. You can either keep both of these tails for stitching in onto your piece, or you can weave one in. It's totally up to you. For the nose, I'm going to do a magic circle with 2 single crochets within that circle. That's it. Pull it tight. And if you notice, when I fasten off, I'm not making knots. I'm just pulling it like that. But you can do a knot if you like. I just don't like the way it looks. This is going to be your nose. To make the tail, you can have a lot of fun with this. You can either do just a solid color or choose a color just for the tip, or even work with stripes. So I'm just going to do a combination of those and do the top of the tail with one color and then switch to the main color. To begin, start with a magic circle or chain 4 with the slip stitch in the stitch next to the knot. Okay. We're going to do 8 single crochets. Okay, there's our 8. Tighten to close. Okay, going into that very first stitch, create a slip stitch. You can go ahead and grab a stitch marker if you like for this, but I don't think it's necessary. We're just going to be repeating round after round the same stitch count. So what I'm going to do with my tail here is I'm going to do 3 rows or 3 rounds of brown and then switch to the orange. So if you just kind of keep it in the back of your mind that you're doing 8, you should be good to go. Okay, I've done my 3 rows of brown. Now I want to switch to the orange, and I just wanted to show you this real quick in case you do want to change color. If you want, you can fasten off and then start in the next stitch there, or you can continue on like this. Just backtrack a little, remove that stitch you just made, so you have 2 loops. You're going to finish that final stitch with your new color. Bring that yarn in. Pull it through, and when you get finished here you can tighten all of that up a little bit better. Now we're going to do our 8 again. So 1, 2, there's our 8. And now I'm just going to continue doing this round after round until I get to about 10 rounds. And what I would suggest, before you get too far ahead of yourself here, I would just take these ends and tie them into a knot and then stuff them inside. Looks like I might have done 12 rows. I told you 10, but it looks like it was a bit longer than that. So I'm going to go ahead and do 12 here as well. And again, you can just thread your yarn through to create a knot, or you can just pull it through like this to stitch in. To make the ears, we're going to start with a slip knot on our hook. We're just going to make chains this time. We're going to make a chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in the third chain from the hook, 1, 2, 3, we're going to do a single crochet. And then in the very final chain there, we're going to do a half double crochet. And that is your ear. Clip your yarn. Give yourself quite a nice tail there because you're going to use that to attach to your body. I'm going to omit the knot and just keep that tail for attaching. And now the fun begins. We're going to add all of our little parts and form our cat. I found the easiest for me was to start with the muzzle. Once I put those in place, then I built from there. I did the muzzle, the nose, the ears, and then the tail. And then I do the eyes at the very end. I would recommend that you find where you fastened off. It looks a little bit uneven. It's pretty easy to spot it. And then once I've got that in the back, that's when I decide where I want the muzzle to be. I kind of go about 3/4 down. Make the center of your muzzle around the 8th row. And then you can take a little pin or something if you want to keep it in place. I'm going to just go ahead and go for it. And I'm just going to tack it in. Let me see if I can make sure this is on camera. I'm just going to go around the edge, tacking it in. White on white, you shouldn't be able to see those stitches. I've got 2 tails that I can work with here. I'm not too worried about how it looks on the inside. That will be covered by the plant. Then weave in as much or as little as you like. And now I'm just going to repeat the process again. I'm just going to make sure that they're very closely butted together to form that muzzle. I'm actually going to attach right behind that previous muzzle to make sure they get nice and close together. And then just repeat, tacking it in like you did before. The shape I'm looking for here is an upside down triangle. This is how I want it to go onto the piece. And then I'm just going to tuck that in. And I'm going to put that right into that center there. To establish the nose. And then from there, once I have that, then I go in and I just tack things in. I'm kind of shaping this nose as I go, trying to maintain that kind of triangle shape. Okay, that's good. I'm not going to tack that in fully yet. I want to make sure that I like everything before I commit. You know, this is important. We want our faces to be really cute. So take your time with this. And, you know, if you have to pull it all out and redo, do it. With these ones that you see here, I took a long time with those. I had to redo the faces many times to get the look I wanted. So I'm going to commit to that. We're going to say that's cute and stitch this in behind. And for the ears, what I do is I use the muzzle for the guide, and I'm just going to take the ear and line it up with the edge of that muzzle. So I'm going to go right here with one of them. Can you see that? And then do the same with the other side. And I'm just going to tack it in on the front of that round one right there. The tails here are at the base, and that's going to form a nice little triangle ear there. Taking advantage of both tails. And then just repeat on the other side with your second ear. To tack on the tail, I'm going to use the ears as my guide. I'm going to get in between those and then go about 1/4 of the way down to tack it on. Just working my yarn into the middle. I'm going to start in the center with this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish. And then I go up a little bit higher just to get it to stay in place. I don't go crazy with this. I just go in, find a spot. I didn't make a very long tail for myself. I would recommend you go a little bit longer than I did. But if you run out of tail yarn here, just add some more. You notice I didn't add any stuffing to this. I kind of just like it to be a little bit thin and narrow, just then that way you can play with it and shape it. And now it's time for the eyes. If you're using safety eyes, you can just go ahead and play with those and see where you want those eyes to go. And then of course with your safety eyes you would add the safety backings to them. If you don't want to work with safety eyes or you don't have any on hand, that's not a big deal. You can work with yarn instead. Just grab a tapestry needle. I have one around somewhere, but I can't find it. So we're just going to use our little finishing needle here. To begin your French knot, just pick wherever you want to begin. You do have these really convenient spaces to go into. I tend to avoid them because I'm afraid my knot is going to eventually slide into the center there. So I've picked somewhere that's a little bit more meaty. Okay. Now I added a knot just to help me because I usually have a tendency to pull it all the way through. Now take your needle and go in front of your yarn. And you're going to wrap it around 2 or 3 times, whatever you like. Then you're going to go back into the base here, not into the same stitch, just right next to it. And you're just going to take your time and pull that yarn through. And that's your French knot. The key to a French knot is very simple. You just want to make sure that you get that needle in front of the yarn and wrap twice towards you. So here's our piece. I'm going to put it where that eye is. I'm going to come in, find a meatier spot. Okay, so you've got all of your yarn behind you. Get it out of your way. Make sure your needle is in front of your yarn. Wrap it towards you 2 or 3 times. We just did 2 here. Let's do 3, make it a bigger eye. And now we're going to go back in, right next to it, not in the same hole, but right next to it. There we go. Don't worry about tension or anything like that. Everything's fine. And then just pull that yarn through. And there's your French knot. And if you really don't want to do a French knot, that's totally understandable. You can just create an eye with a couple of stitches. Just find a spot where you want your eye to be. Here's a good spot here. I'm just going to go in. At this point, I would take advantage of those gaps and just go in. And just keep feeding the yarn in, sort of next to it. I would just keep going until I got it to the width I wanted. Trying not to overlap them, you just want them to run next to each other. And then you could add a little bit of white if you wanted to give the eye a little bit of sparkle. Then once you're all finished, it's time to get him into shape. You can just play with him a little bit. He's pretty stiff like this. You may not need any kind of stiffener, but if you find that the yarn you're working with is kind of soft and things aren't getting into the shape that you like, you can always add a little bit of starch to this. This isn't going to give you a very permanent or strong finish. It's just going to keep things in place for you. Just a little bit of spray starch works really well. Usually when you do this, it does take quite a while for this to dry. I would leave this overnight to dry. It can get that wet and sticky. Now, if you want this to be really stiff, I would recommend that you do a glue and water mixture, and then you can just either dip it into that or brush it on. If you want to see a video on this, let me know. I do plan on doing one in the future, but if I get enough comments about that, I'll make sure to do it sooner rather than later. To make the bunny and the puppy, you're going to follow the instructions for the cat. Everything is just the same except for the ears and their tails. But I would recommend that you watch the instructions for the cat's tail because you're going to be doing a very similar technique for these tails here. So for example, here on this puppy, I did a magic circle with 8 single crochets and then did 2 more rounds in the same color, the dark color, and then 2 more rounds in the neutral or body color. And then just cut yourself a nice long tail to attach to the back. For the bunny tail, I did a magic circle with 6 single crochets. And then for round 2, I doubled that up to 12 single crochets, just like we were doing with the body, but instead of 8, we're doing 6. And then to stitch that in place, I just kind of tucked it in as I went around. Neither one of these have any kind of polyfill or cotton inside of it. For the ears, I used the same pattern for both the puppy and the bunny here. The only difference is there's 1 extra round around the ears here that I'll explain in just a second. Chain 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Starting in the second chain from the hook, 1, 2, create a single crochet. We're going to do that all the way down in each chain. This will give you a total of 7 single crochets. Now we're going to start working the other side. This is the center of your ear. Now in the same spot that you created your single crochet, go ahead and do a slip knot. This is going to be the base of your ear. Now we have 6 remaining stitches to work into. We're just going to fill those with single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Do you see this little stitch here? This is the single crochet that we did on the other side. We're going to work 3 half double crochets into this. This is going to form the tip of our ears. Yarn over, go into that stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. That's a half double crochet. 2 more. Now we're going to work the other side. We have 6 stitches remaining. We're going to work the first 3 with half double crochets. In the next 2, create a single crochet. And in the final stitch here, do a slip stitch. We're back to the base of our ears. And that's all there is to it for the bunny ears. At this point, just go ahead and make a second one. Be sure to give yourself a nice long tail when you fasten off so you can attach the ears more easily. To make these ears a little bit stiffer, I found spray starch worked really well. Just like I was showing earlier for shaping the body of your planter, you can do the same thing with the ears. Just saturate both sides and leave it to dry. Now you can use this as well, just like this for the puppy ear. It's just going to be a little bit more narrow, but if you want it to be a little bit wider, I would recommend that you just go around with single crochets. Okay, in that 7th one, 3 single crochets. That just helps you get around that edge. To attach, I did the same thing as I did with the cat, just used the round 1 as my guide here, and then just stitched underneath. And that's all there is to him. I didn't even bother with any spray starch with this. It just curled and made really cute ears all on its own.